Welcome to Beyond the Bit Quantum Pathways, the podcast where we explore the exciting world of quantum careers. I'm Amir Rasool, your host, here to bring you inspiring stories from industry pioneers, researchers and innovators who are shaping the future. Whether you're a career changer, a curious mind or an aspiring quantum professional, this is your gateway to discovering opportunities in this groundbreaking field. Welcome back to Beyond the Bit Quantum Pathways, the podcast where we explore the stories, ideas, and people shaping the future of quantum tech. Today's guest is Yannis Stubbemann, co-founder of Aqora, a quantum computing startup on a mission to make quantum more accessible, scalable, and collaborative. The name Aqora pays homage to the Agora, a vibrant heart of Greek city-states. In antiquity, the Agora was more than just a marketplace. It was the central gathering space for political debate, commerce, social interaction, and a cultural exchange. You may know Aqora from their global quantum competitions, but now they're shifting towards practical solutions with a vision of becoming the hugging face of quantum. In this episode, we dive into Yannis' journey from quantum research and venture capital to deep trek in entrepreneurship. We talk about the evolution of Aqora, the role of community, and the importance of transparency in the industry, and where he sees quantum headed next. Whether you're deep in the field or just curious as to where quantum is going, this conversation is packed with insight. So let's get into it. Hi, Yannis. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, hi Amir. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Fantastic. Obviously, we've been trying to get this arranged for a while, but great to have you on the podcast. Obviously, we've not met each other previously, so it'd be a great opportunity for me to learn a little bit more about you. Obviously, we came together because in your salary survey, which is something we'll talk about. So I suppose let's start with the basics. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey into quantum computing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Yannis. I'm German. Right now, you also find me here in Berlin in my home office. My background is in computer science, so I studied computer science here in Germany, mostly focusing on machine learning, actually, for the initial motivation. Later on, I started focusing on quantum computing. So there was like another startup that I co-founded in between. But this was really getting me excited in 2018 when I saw Google announcing their Circ SDK, making the headline, the top news on Hacker News, actually. And then I was happy to find my university was one of the few to have a quantum computing professor in computer science, so not in physics. And yeah, I could get exposed to the quantum supremacy experiment back then that I simulated with classical neural networks, which was exciting to really understand the state of the art in the field, understand like the basics of it, and also see the overlaps between machine learning and quantum computing there. And while I had not worked afterwards in the quantum industry, I was always looking into some opportunities here and there. But after all, I was joining another startup that had a very nice or very, very great product market fit about it, which I wanted to learn. And then also worked with Binance actually before co-founding the Aqora. So mostly been working in different tech roles, tech lead and DevOps positions. But yeah, I also was on the side active as the president of Push Quantum, which is a students' initiative of Technical University of Munich that I got involved in during COVID. They were having a quantum entrepreneurship laboratory course back then offered while I was still working or finishing up my master thesis, basically, which I felt was a perfect fit. And I stayed a bit active and then later became president. That's how I continued being in the field, got to know my co-founders who were already running hackathons, and then they reached out to me 1.5 years ago, and that's how we got the Aqora started.
Oh, fantastic. So is there a point that got you hooked in this field? Can you pinpoint a moment, or is it just general progression?
I think it's, really the fact that I saw this announcement by Google on Hacker News, on Circ, because then I felt, okay, now it's a real thing. I was already reading about quantum computing here and there when I made the decision to study computer science, actually. But I understood it was a completely theoretical concept back then. So this really hooked me and I wanted to understand it. I wanted to dive into it and really understand what it's all about now.
Funny. I recruited in data science and machine learning, and I started in 2016. And then I kind of gravitated towards quantum, and I think quite a lot of us have done that because obviously we'd like to be at the forefront of technology. And I started hearing more and more about quantum, and I thought, actually, you know what, that's an area that I want to continue with, and hence we're talking today. So obviously you mentioned you're co-founder of Aqora. What inspired you and your co-founders to start that, and what was the original mission?
Yeah. So Well, starting Aqora as such, I think it was more of a logical next step. My co-founders were running in-person hackathons under the QuantX name, which is the Students Alumni Association of the École Polytechnique in Paris. And they've reached the point where they got requests for hackathons and felt it's time to take this next step. And they were basically looking for someone with technical expertise to execute on building such a platform and everything that needs around. But that's really the motivation. And I mean, like this kind of reasoning, maybe from, or maybe I shouldn't say motivation, but reasoning from the back perspective. But also we saw this opportunity that there wasn't really anything or not much, at least from a community perspective, approaching quantum computing and forward looking, having this perspective on quantum advantage coming over this next few years, supposedly, like we have an optimistic view on this ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just felt there's a gap that we want to close. It might still be early for giving how the hardware is advancing or is being there and how companies can explore this, but we think that there was this need for something where companies can easily, like with a lower entrance barrier, explore quantum computing, while at the same time the community can actually understand what quantum computing can also be good for, like what kind of use cases would be considered. So yeah, I think it's really these things that somehow came together that we thought like, yeah, this is having this community first approach is the right thing for this.
Excellent. And you've built quite a strong your reputation through your quantum competitions, but I know that you're now shifting to full-on solutions and building those. Can you tell me first of all a little bit more about the competitions and also what sparked this evolution?
Yes, absolutely. So it's also something that we had in mind from the beginning. So overall, we take inspiration from what we've seen in the machine learning data science field. Like there is Kaggle. I mean, it's still
Sure.
there.
Yeah.
It used to become popular, I think, 10 years ago, maybe a bit more than 10 years, with exactly those kind of benefits. Like companies can bring their use case and source great solutions, and members from the community can actually showcase their skills and build their reputation. So this was kind of this logical step that we saw, given having a background in hackathons and having worked with both sides and understanding how quantum computing is being explored and approached from both sides. We basically wanted to build this kind of operating system for in-person hackathons that also allows us to run virtual hackathons. But then also considering like what can be next steps afterwards and seeing the impact that Hugging Face has in machine learning, building this kind of tailor-made GitHub again, like it's more like a GitHub for LLMs. And now we want to be the GitHub or the Hugging Face for quantum computing, where we see also that we can add a lot of value by having this once dedicated platform, just by the brand, but also from having the access to the different hardwares, how it's being orchestrated, and also that any quantum solution is basically a pipeline of algorithms, compilation and orchestration layer, and some in between steps where you might want to translate your problem instance to something smaller that can fit on near-term devices. So yeah, no, it has been our plan from the beginning. And since we now have been building this competitions platform and seeing these competitions working, we can move on tech-wise to these next steps and start exploring those.
Fantastic. And you mentioned community a few times there. And I know Aqora's competitions have brought in quite a global community from students to researchers to startups. What have you learned about how people want to engage with quantum?
Oh yeah, that's a very interesting question. So I think like the main challenge persists. It's like there needs to be education in the market in two ways. First, that there is quantum computing and it can do something, but at the same time saying it can't do anything really today. And then bridging these things together and saying, well, you should start exploring today because in these next few years it might have an impact on your business. So it is rather explorative from the companies that we've been working with. And yeah, from the community side, what we understand is, I mean, I also engage with a few people on Reddit sharing our competitions and results there, and getting good direct feedback in the value from their perspective. And I think they're right, is really, if we see the participants presenting their solutions, it's important not only to understand what they did as of today, but how it can scale in the future. So how do they build this MVP today that they know once we have more qubits, more better fidelities, and so on and so on, how can it then even be a better solution and solve bigger problem instances? So I think that's what we see really.
So basically looking at using open source and open source tools to collaborate and develop the sort of future of quantum software.
Well, I mean, I would say yes. If you look into different fields, I think it's the case, but I think it's a question that's not only interesting in quantum. Like we see this very, very big debate in machine learning at the moment. There's OpenAI, which called themselves OpenAI, and then they are now having only closed source models. And then there's Hugging Face, which is not, well, I mean, I think they're also developing their own models or replicating some of the DeepSeek efforts, for instance. But you can see how the open source really brings value. Like we've seen the Llama 3 release, I think it was 3 last year, that was outperforming the closed source ChatGPT on several benchmarks for the first time. And then earlier this year, we had this DeepSeek moment that was questioning all the investments into the GPU infrastructure globally. So I think there's a lot of value in open source. And I really would like to see like also having such impacts in quantum computing. And for sure, there will also be very, very good closed source solutions. And I think it will always be a mix of them. And
Yeah,
we are
yeah.
here to support both worlds.
And become the hugging face of quantum, which is fantastic. Excellent. So something I mentioned earlier, which sort of came into how you came into my orbit. You did a salary survey, which was for the quantum industry. Why did you decide to create that, and what was the goal behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we've seen resonated very well with the broader community, which we even didn't expect to that degree. Actually, it comes from like the original motivation comes from also from this motivation of building Aqora, where we it's not only explore for companies to explore use cases, but also for the individuals in the community to build up their portfolios. And we have the side offer that's available on quantum.jobs, where we think it's nice to have to understand like how this market is also looking. And we see also here it's not really mature and that we hadn't seen any such direct compilation from the last year at least. So we
Yeah.
thought, why not put it out there and hopefully bring some transparency in here that can again help both sides and help accelerating this field. Because I think that's also coming back to our original motivation. We want to be a bit of a catalyst for the field, just enabling more interactions among these solutions and talents and stuff like that.
Yeah, fantastic. Similar to me. Like I kind of pivoted from data science into now quantum pathways, which is about educating people about quantum, the careers that exist now, what's going to exist tomorrow, how we can, start to prepare for the future. Have you seen any surprising trends in the data so far? Something that you didn't expect?
Let me think about it.
Mhm.
So I think, I mean, just to me, well, it's more of a sad truth than too surprising is again how you see this differences in Europe and the US.
Yeah.
I think we have great talent here in Europe. We also see that many great hardware providers come actually from Europe.
Yeah.
But well, if the US is paying the higher salaries, then we will lose this talent. And yeah, we have seen this before. It would be great
Yeah.
if there would be a change in it, but what can we
Yeah.
do?
Which is traditional. I mean, if you look at data science, which like I said, I recruited for many years, the big
Yeah.
paying salaries almost 3 times as much are in the US. So it's a huge draw. However, I was reading an article the other day and they're saying that there's now a drain coming the other way from the US to Europe, which I think is fun being European, although I'm in England and we're not technically Europe anymore. I'm European. And I think that's fantastic because there is such a huge talent. There's such a diverse population, cultures, everything all on doorsteps, 2 hours and you're in a
Yeah,
different country, which I think is fantastic. Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So back to Aqora, obviously like you started off in competitions and now you're looking to change that. I also know that you're in the midst of Aqora's raising Aqora's seed round. How's that been so far? And can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. No, I think it's been the usual experiences that you make as a founder. Like I last year we raised our pre-seed, and there was some raise that I did before, like from the amount of money we raised. This was now a bit more. I think it's a bit similar in approaching investors than also to approaching companies. You have the ones that go all in quantum, that educate themselves on the market, or that have already quantum portfolio, and then you have the ones that you need to explain how quantum can have an impact in a few years. But no, I think it's been overall going well. We have made some good developments in these last few weeks. I think we can have some good announcements soon.
Excellent.
Yeah. So no, I think it's good from here.
Fantastic. So I suppose you kind of touched upon this. What's the biggest lesson you've learned as a quantum founder pitching to VC?
Oh, well, yeah. What's the biggest learning? I think, yeah. I mean, I think a few. I'm just thinking what's like a, kind of the biggest, but I think it's really about this de-risking the quantum business model. Like with Aqora, we don't build up IP over time. So for them, I mean, they look for something that will for sure make value, and they can see how they de-risk themselves. And I mean, that's absolutely fair, right? And how the value can be 3, 5, 10 times in a few years from here. And I mean, I believe that we will have this with Aqora,
Yeah.
like also taking Hugging Face as a role model for ourselves and seeing how they could do it. But we understand that a business model like ours to really take off is dependent on other players, meaning the hardware providers building hardware that cannot be simulated classically anymore. And then, yeah, what if quantum advantage is not happening in 2027 as well claimed by IBM and a few others now in this time range? What if it happens 3, 5 years later, but their investment cadence is in these thinking in these 18-month rounds? That's been the biggest like discussion, I
Hmm.
would say. And again, here we can really see this difference between VCs that are bullish on quantum and invest
Yeah.
into quantum and can also see the value in something like Aqora that can even work as a hedge for them because they are not investing in one individual hardware modality, but rather in a kind of global operating system, even with this kind of app store.
Yeah.
And I think that's then the kind of story that works with them. While for others who at the moment also have opportunities to invest into AI companies, and I mean, they can make what was it like lovable 10 million revenues in a few months, or Cursor AI 100 million in 12 months or something, recurring annual revenue even. But it's I mean, we will see how they will develop over time and keep their business models alive like this. But yeah, they have many things to choose from and see those extreme dynamics in AI at the moment. So for them, quantum is just a longer term bet that if it fits into their current fund structure, then yes, they are open. But yeah, it depends on the timing with them also.
Which is interesting because that's the next question I was going to talk to you about. Where do you think we are in the kind of the hype cycle, for want of a better way of putting it? Post hype, pre boom, somewhere in between.
Yeah, no, I think what we see is, so I mean, I entered quantum basically very shortly before the Google supremacy experiment and then could actually work on
Was
that.
that 2018, 2019?
2019, yeah,
So
I think it
you're an
was,
officially an old timer then.
yeah, maybe even. And I mean, this for sure, like generated some, interest, rush on this technology. People wanted to understand what NIST can do for them,
Yeah.
which then came with a disappointment. And then also, I think global economic challenges, they made companies that started investing backing out a bit again. Now we have these claims that in 2 years from now, I think, or IBM even, I think now says 2026, and I don't know, 18 months from here, we see first quantum advantage, which makes people more bullish again. While at the same time, we have to understand what does it mean really to have a quantum advantage? Is it one? I mean, the very first quantum advantage demonstration will be one specific problem on one specific hardware. It won't be large scale. It doesn't mean it makes economically sense. But no, for us, so we take a bit these analogs that quantum supremacy, and again, like taking analogs from AI, that quantum supremacy was kind of the Transformers paper that was released by Google. Oh, I don't know the exact year, but
Sure.
before GPT-1, 2, and then 3. And 3 was then basically the basis for ChatGPT. And for us, the quantum advantage moment will be something like a ChatGPT moment where there's a proof of concept. Well, I mean, now we have, what is it, 2.5 years after the ChatGPT moment and see how it's really changed our lives.
Yeah.
Quantum will be different, but
Yes.
we at least assume it will be different dynamics from there in how it's being explored alone. And we believe there's a lot of value in exploring quantum computing, even before it's then just this plug and play that just from
Yeah.
today reduces costs by 10% for your company, whatever. Yeah, so I think we are in this pre-boom. We are with Aqora, we are extremely optimistic, having followed this developments for these past few years, that we will see something in the next few years.
Mhm.
And I mean, really few years, meaning next 2 years, and that from there, this market will look very different from today.
I think it's looking very different from last year and this year alone with the releases. I was reading an article on LinkedIn just about the investment that's come into 2025, and obviously we are the year of quantum, and we've just had International
Right.
Quantum Day. But last year it seemed to kind of taper a little bit, but like you say, I think that's probably due to global economic events and so on. But this year there seems to be, I mean, it's the, everyone says startups, it's the big players who are getting the money, but it shows that there's money out there and people are less risk averse, which gives the likes of Aqora and the ability to pitch for the funds, which I think is fantastic. Are there any industries that you think are actually ready for quantum now, even if we're still early? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, well, the one thing we have seen just, I think, a month ago was by Quantinum and JPMC on this verified randomness, which is getting very close to also quantum advantage. So I think
Mhm.
that's something to follow. I mean, by industry, this is finance, right? And they have this interest. What we actually see on Aqora, but it might be just coincidence, is we tag our competitions by industry also, and we see a lot of from the energy sector. So which is interesting. But I think
Mhm.
if you look into the reports from McKinsey and BCG, you see the sector that puts the most money is finance.
Sure. JP
Once for
Morgan,
these,
HSBC, they've got huge
yes,
teams, Singapore, New York, London, etc. But then
yeah,
there's a lot there's a lot at stake there, isn't it? When I first started looking at finance, I've been a tech recruiter for over 20 years, and I learned about low latency and what a difference, a second can make in a trade. And you think, oh, okay, yeah, there's vested interest here.
yeah,
You're kind of
absolutely.
preempting, yeah, because after you continue.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add to this. So I think what's been very interesting for us to see is as we come from this kind of use case exploration perspective first, in a way that first there's the use case and then there's people providing the solutions, is that we have seen one interesting competition on clinical trial optimization. So if you think about quantum computing, you might think about pharma industry, but more about this drug discovery process. While this is more later in the stages of getting the new drug to market. And it's a use case where, well, you want to find out or you want to minimize the dependency on features or correlation between features among the patients, like that. So it's an optimization problem. And it's something that even with smaller cohort size becomes rather difficult to compute classically. So it's a use case that's surprisingly I don't know. I mean, to me, at least, surprisingly far from quantum. If I first look at it as saying,
Mm.
I mean, it's an optimization problem. I get that, but which I would not have considered as myself as a potential good candidate for an earlier quantum advantage than, I don't know, simulating a bigger drug that just
Yeah.
requires more qubits. So I think it's like, and again, that's why I'm saying I think it's really worth exploring different use cases. It could be something in logistics where it's really you are on this edge of, I don't know, you have a not too big number of parcels to optimize or something, but the complexity of the search space is just so big.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there is some pattern to it that's somehow quantum natural, and I mean, if you want to call it quantum natural, and that's how you find it. So I think there could be these small use cases where you also immediately have this impact either by cost reduction or doing something that you couldn't do before.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Interestingly, so like, obviously you've got a data science background from and a machine learning. I have from a recruitment. And post COVID, I pivoted towards biotech, as we all did, because obviously we had the big pharma companies and all the vaccines were coming out, and it was like, yeah, great, and so on. And there was a hell of a lot of investment, and we also had the post COVID boom, and everyone was investing in biotech. Then obviously the economy changed. And everyone started pulling out because VCs, as you know, want returns, and you could be 5 years with no route to market or the trials finish. And I think that's going to be a very interesting space for biotech with quantum, that we can speed that process up significantly.
yeah, absolutely. That will be. I mean, I'm really looking forward to it.
Mhm. Okay. So talk about fast forward. So let's fast forward 5 years. For Aqora is now the hugging face of quantum. What does that world look like? What will be people using Aqora for?
Well, I think so for lots of things, hopefully.
Mm.
I think we will see how much mainstream applications quantum computing can really then get into. It might be rather a lot, might be still a few in 5 years from here. But what I would see is really that people integrate it into their workflows. That on Aqora, there's this Basically, for them, like for people applying quantum computing, it's kind of a store, a one-stop shop to go to look for the best solution for their specific problem, probably with some AI support, right? Either on their side or ours. And then they can utilize this black box and see, well, either completely new things for their business or cost savings and some optimization pipelines for them. So this is really what I would see. Ideally, there will be quantum for everyone. So there will be a
Sure.
solution that anyone could use. We will see. But yeah, no, it's like for us, our vision is really to be this go-to place, this global operating system, and then having quantum at a stage where it's more understandable also for everyone what it is about, so that there's not like over promises, but also not miss of opportunity. And then it can be integrated, and also, I don't know, whoever is looking to build their new business around quantum, that they can also start building from our collection of solutions
Platform, or yeah,
and
exactly,
our
because
tooling.
yeah, so they're not limited to one hardware, one technology, and they have the
Yeah,
ability to. It's like test beds, isn't it? So you can actually say which ones. Let's try them out without as
yeah.
much capital outlay and see which one works best for our product.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And ideally, we have some smartness by then. We have seen enough execution of algorithms. We know the best way to orchestrate and which solutions to choose and all of these things.
Okay. Um, Obviously, you are looking at lots of different industries. Is there anything that's kind of mind blowing, a development that's happening right now that you kind of like, wow, that's going to be really interesting going? Obviously, we talked about biotech very briefly.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure I could really say that. Like, I think more similar to my answer before. I'm really curious about all these things that would not have been considered first, because we have seen, I don't know, I mean, quantum computing proposed in the 80s for a simulation of nature, meaning simulation of new drugs, for instance, or molecules and development of new drugs. And then Shor's algorithm, so we know we can break RSA, and then some smaller things, but it's also still all coming from this mathematical understanding of quantum computing first and trying to utilize it to solve something. But what if we think about our small, hardest problems and just try to start thinking from that perspective of quantum, because that's not what's happening in research. People who do the research are the quantum physicists, mathematicians, computer scientists, and I think we should start thinking from this other perspective and just see like, okay, this is my use case. Can quantum do anything for me? Educate myself a bit together with consultants, with others. How do I need to formulate it? And then I think we will get to very new things and very new perspective on quantum computing. Maybe even to mention this, like if we today think about developing quantum solution, it might not be 100% the case anymore, but we think in these circuit models of, so how does my circuit need to look like? It would be as if we think about like assembly language, if we first from getting from there to a solution of, I don't know, building an Uber. But I think it's a very different approach to get to an Uber, where you just say like, wouldn't it be great if we have the opportunity or the way to have a taxi driver without a taxi company in between. And then, well, in the end, there will be something compiled to assembly and some CPU, whatever, can execute it. But that's somehow not how we think about quantum at the moment. Also for good reasons, but I think we should start in these small things. In these small
Yeah.
things, look about your pipelines and what are the parts that could be maybe a good fit for quantum, either because they're just very expensive for classical machines and difficult, because they seem from the mathematical description to be a good fit.
It's funny, isn't it? So I was talking to somebody about AI and how that's kind of progressed, and this person turned around to me. It's Christopher Bishop, actually. Because there's someone sitting in a bedroom thinking about a problem that we haven't even thought about,
Yeah.
and tackling that. And there's so much going on behind closed doors that we're not aware of, which is phenomenal. I love that. So somebody's going to be looking at a problem, or it's a solution to something that quantum may be the answer, which is fascinating. It's
Yeah,
like the Uber,
absolutely.
that Uber came about from one guy waiting for a taxi going, "Where's my taxi?" I mean, we're old
Yeah.
enough to remember that, and there's actually, what if I could track my taxi? And now we track everything. Where's my Deliveroo? Where's my food? Where's my everything? Where's my Amazon? Today I was like, oh, he's 9 stops away. Oh, he's 6 stops away. So
Yeah.
that itself has just opened up a huge market just from one person waiting for a taxi. So who knows what's around the corner?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, Obviously, looking at expanding yourselves. You've come from a machine learning and a quantum background yourself. For people who are listening, and I ask this for everybody who are curious about quantum but don't know where to start, what would your advice be?
Oh yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, we see this with new hires that we do, right? I mean, I think so. I mean, first I can probably answer for computer scientists and engineers, and I think once I could say, well, start exploring on Aqora, but there's great resources on Qiskit and Penny Lane, so these usual tech ways to get themselves educated on small problems and then solving some challenges and learning along the way from tutorials and stuff. Which and then you have good community support by some forums, which works very well for them. But they also have a bit of this mathematical, technical affinity more to them, and probably being a bit closer to understanding the fundamentals of quantum physics, at least what a qubit is, how you describe it as a linear system and stuff. For others, yes, I really see the challenge. Some people also that we hired in the past, that it's not that easy to get the understanding. I think the best part or the best thing to do is go to these conferences that are there. Like we've been to a bigger one in Dubai end of February. There is the
Oh, yeah. So was
Q2B,
that
there's
the
the
Quantum
Quantum World
Innovation
Congress.
Summit?
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
because
Yes, the Quantum World.
earlier I was talking to Anna Hedegaard, and she was there. She was one of the rising stars. She's
Yeah.
based in, is it Bremen?
Ah, yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's based in Bremen. Yes. Actually close to my hometown. I'm from
Oh, is there?
Oldenburg, which is
Fantastic.
not too far. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I think these events, they help to really get an understanding
Yeah.
for the right expectation. If one just educates himself on I would say like LinkedIn, I'm a bit worried that there is, well, not always clear on the claims that are being made. I think it has
Yes.
become better again, but
Yeah.
sometimes there are bit too big claims on quantum advantage, or well, on the other side, very technical people who also want to be extremely careful on not promising too much, and then they're somewhere in between, maybe or closer to one or the other. There's the truth, but like what I've seen is really going to events, talking to the people, understanding how everyone perceives it at the moment, and then talking to more business and more tech people there and see all their different perspectives. That's what I see is really the best way to get an
Yeah.
understanding of where this field is.
Yeah. Interesting. That I started going to conferences last year, and I was at The Economist around this
Mm.
time. And I went around the stands and the various companies that we all know. And I was like, I'm effectively a salesperson and a middleman. So I was asking people, who are you? You know, what's your background? Because your company, essentially multi-million-dollar company or pound, why have they put you front and foremost at this conference where the tickets are probably quite? And I found that there were lots of very technical people, which is great. But then that kind of made me think. A lot of the people that are going to be making these decisions aren't going to be technical people. You know, the boardroom, C-suite aren't technical people. And I think what is going to be important is having people who can translate a very high level technical topic into, distill it down into what's the benefit for you. And that's something I
Yeah.
was going to talk to you about when you're talking about, when talking to pitching to VCs. How do you strike a balance between the technical complexity of what you're doing and making it interesting for investors and partners who might not have a quantum background?
Yeah, so again, it's a very good question. So basically, we draw these analogies to AI. That's really like, it's not just because we see it as a good tool, but it's really how we perceive it. And then a better analogy in some places and worse in others. It also helps to show like the market development of stock prices, if you consider how they have been developing since basically mid of last year. So to understand there's a public interest and are starting to be a public understanding more of this technology and the state of the technology. And also, if you look at the public investments that are being made, which also show that it's becoming more real and how they have been developing over these past 10 years. I mean, well, there's the aspect of just the pure money flow for investors, of course, but I think there's a broader, like a deeper meaning to this and how this field develops and reaches mainstream and why it does, and also showing the outlook over the next few years, the roadmaps, because I think that that's something that we can be very grateful for in the field, is if you consider how public these roadmaps of the hardware providers have been published for these past few years, taking IBM as an example, and how accurate they have been holding them. It really builds this trust also with outsiders of this industry to understand, okay, yeah, what they promise they can hold, and they have been doing, and there is really advancements in this field happening.
And I think that's what's giving it quite some great momentum. One, I find the community very open and honest, and because of that, people are starting to see, okay, it's not. Although I talk about closed doors, it's out there. We're all pushing to get to the same point because we can see it as such a revolutionary, exciting technology.
Yeah,
Interesting
absolutely. And
space.
that's
Yeah.
something I also appreciate a lot in this field. It's a very small community actually, so you will often see the same people, or if someone leaves one company, they join the other one. But no, it's really been great experience so far.
We'd love to hear more about you in the future. How can our audience connect with you or follow your work?
Well, I'm active on LinkedIn for this past year, starting to build a bit of an audience and updating on what's happening on Aqora. I want to make it a bit broader. I think also what's happening in quantum once I find the time, because it's not always easy as a startup founder to have time for everything. But I think that's at the moment the best way on the public profiles and it's, like statements that I do. You can connect with me there and also send me a DM.
Sure.
Try to reply. I mean, besides that, obviously connect with me on Aqora, follow me there,
Yep.
see what I'm doing there. But I think this will continue evolving and be of more use at the moment. Probably LinkedIn is the best way.
Well, once we release this episode, I'll make sure there's links to your profile, to Aqora, the salary survey. There's, lots of great stuff that's very interesting for people out there. Yanis, thanks for joining me today. I thought it was fantastic. Really good to meet you. I'd love to get you back on again in a few months' time, and you can tell us how the seed round's progressing, how Aqora's progressing, and continue educating people on this journey. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the invitation. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and apologize again. It took some time to schedule this, but no, it's great. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. And that's a wrap on today's Quantum Adventure. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe, share it with a fellow quantum enthusiast, and leave us a review. It helps us reach much more curious minds. If you have any questions or feedback, please reach out at beyondthebit.quantum@gmail.com. Stay tuned for more exciting explorations into the world of quantum careers. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Until then, keep exploring the quantum possibilities.